welcome to today's Conquer Risk podcast. I've got Manish Kata and myself, Jeff Goodnow, ready to rock and roll on another topic. And so, something that we've seen hit the news recently, and so, there's a lot of people starting to talk about this. We thought it would be appropriate to hit is the custom SMA and direct indexing. Now the reality is, right? We want to start with this in the direct indexing. Like, what is that? Right. And so Manish, you and I were talking about it. It's like all the custom SMA stuff really is the bulk of what we're going to talk about because it's a sort of a subset. So the direct indexing, right? That's basically the ability to take, instead of a mutual fund or an ETF that has some sort of a wrapper and wrapper cost, to have the client simply own the actual stocks in, let's just say, the S&P 500 index, right? But we all in agreement on that?
Yeah, and to your point a little bit, it can be confusing when you talk about custom SMA and direct indexing. I think they go hand in hand because with technology, one's not really possible without the other. And so, yes, direct indexing ultimately is the ability to take an index, an ETF, a mutual fund, whatever it may be that tracks an index, and replace that by owning the underlying stocks itself versus the index. And so that's what we want to dive into here, and pros, cons, and what we're planning on doing about it.
Yeah, and so from that standpoint, let's just dig in here. I think it's interesting because we're always looking for topics, right? And so I want to give a little bit of a shout out. Keith Mickelfielder was somebody that he and I converse occasionally on LinkedIn. Is with Smart Life Financial Group, and when I posted something there, I said, hey, what topics would advisors like to hear from next? You and I had this discussion about direct indexing, and we thought that would be a good topic. And then, like an hour later, I post this on LinkedIn, and of course, he's the first one to jump in and say, "Why don't you guys talk about direct indexing?" So voila, here we are. It's pretty straightforward. That obviously was hitting the right note, I guess. So I said, "All right, well, that's coming." All right, so I want to hit something which is a little different, right? Instead of talking about all these cool things about it, let's hit the obvious, which is, what do people usually say at stuff like this? And this surprised me when I started doing a little bit of research. Cerulli even came out and basically said this is a fad. The concept of direct indexing is a fad, and that kind of blew me away. Okay, well, let's see why. I mean, there's a lot of things. I'll admit, 10 years ago, I said SMAs are, maybe 15 years ago, I said SMAs are a fad. The whole UMA, excuse me. And the reason was the UMA, when it first came out, it was basically an accounting trick, and it wasn't done very well. And so, I said, look, I don't know if this is going to hit because it wasn't being executed very good. Well, okay, so maybe that's part of the problem, right? Direct indexing is starting to come about, and it's not necessarily prevalent yet, but I think it's coming. Would you agree?
Well,
think it's coming down the road?
This is where the separation comes in between direct indexing and custom SMAs, right? And this is a good launching point because, yes, initially direct indexing to me is a fad and still is. The literal definition of direct indexing, where people were saying, look, you're going to take an ETF or a mutual fund that charges 10 basis points, and to save 10 basis points, you're going to replicate that with stocks. That is stupid. Like, no, really, when you think about all those holdings and possible tax consequences, whatever it may be, yes, it's a fad to say that it's a one-to-one replication, but where it becomes powerful is how you can customize around that, and that is, I think, where the future is taking the ability to replicate an index with customization.
Now, I think you're spot on, and I mean, just one of the things that comes to my mind when I think about, well, is it for everybody? Look, how many clients get annoyed with 10 positions in their account? You really want to give them the S&P 500 list? I mean, it's not for everybody. But that said, right? Realize this: if you think it's a fad, Fidelity, Schwab, Orion, Altruist. Let's see, Morgan Stanley just bought, was it Parametric? I mean, there are big players in this industry that are making plays to make sure that they can cover direct indexing. And now that you don't have trade costs in most of these custodians, right, you really eliminated the big barrier that made this not make sense. So now it is back to an accounting issue. can they handle the accounting? And this is where the rest of our conversation comes in discussing where there are benefits. So that at least you advisors who are listening and watching can understand where, okay, maybe you want to take this seriously for certain types of clients or certain circumstances.
Yeah, I want to dive into it with this intro. The reason we're talking about this is, yes, it's come up in conversations, but more so than anything, with the launch of our UMA, we've been approached now because we're offering models from different providers, and alongside of those clients, you have large clients with certain needs, and we've been approached with this. Like, how are you going to address this? How can we create this custom SMA? And we did not have a solution. We're working on one, and we're hopeful to have it launched by summertime. But this was the driving factors. Like, we need to put this in place, right? And the first example that came up was high concentration. For example, we had a client situation where they had a very large concentration in a certain tech stock. For hypothetical purposes, let's say it was Microsoft, right? 50% of the portfolio was Microsoft. Well, fine. If you're going to bring that client in, you don't then want to also buy triple Qs and SPY and further double down on Microsoft. So you have to have a solution where you say, all right, let's hold that position, right? Maybe let's exit over time, do some tax loss harvesting, and the rest of it, let's, maybe cover an index X tech. Let's pull out Microsoft, right, Salesforce, anything that looks like that, and give them that customized exposure with having that concentrated position. I think that is one of the biggest benefits of this custom SMA technology.
Yeah, it's funny with your math in my head. I was thinking if they already own half their portfolio is Microsoft, then you'd add SPI and the triple Qs. It's like, now are we quadrupling down on some of the tech? Yeah, it gets pretty crazy, and there are some folks that are in that circumstance. I mean, good for them, right? They've worked a lot of times. It's maybe they've worked for the company, and therefore they've ended up with a lot of the stock. So it's not necessarily anything they can control, for lack of a better phrase. It's not like they went out and said, you know what, I feel like I'm going to just spend the next 15 years investing in Apple because I know it'll turn into something, right? I mean, instead, it's they worked at Microsoft and they've gotten those stocks from that process. Now, along that line, I think you can't talk about stock concentrations, owning the individual securities without also bringing taxation into the equation. And this is where, again, you can have a real advantage because obviously, ETFs usually mitigate most of the capital gain kind of circumstance, but mutual funds obviously can have capital gain issues as far as distributions, and is a client prepared for that? Your higher net worth clients, oftentimes it makes sense to give them the individual securities so they own the individual tax lots. And that's something that you can do with direct indexing because that's kind of the whole point, right? They own the actual companies. Now, if they're doing taxes themselves, probably ought to keep it simple. But, hey, higher net worth clients have people that do stuff for them, right? I mean, so if you can make that a more palatable, pleasurable experience, then good deal. And you run with it from there.
I mean, I think this ties into the concentration. Like if you have a stock that you need to slowly unwind over time, it becomes helpful. I think. Side rant here. Like a lot of people spend too much time on taxes. If you have tax losses, it means that you fucking lost money. And so if you pay taxes on gains. So, I think this is probably overblown unless you are a large net worth client with embedded gains. Like if you, for example, you bring on a client, an 85-year-old lady that has ExxonMobil. For 20 years, she's been accumulating for whatever reason. You're not going to blow out of that position and put it all in models and have that tax hit for whatever it is. So in this circumstance, the tax loss harvesting of it is important. The reason I'm kind of fired up about it is because we've seen instances where people are trying to dance around nothing worth of gains and losses. Like sometimes it just doesn't matter. Like go make money.
Right. Well, yeah, I always say, look, there's a bright side to paying taxes, and that is you made more money, you earn more income. So
Correct.
that's not always a necessarily a bad thing. And funny enough, I had a family member who was about 85 when she passed away and had nothing but Exxon Mobil almost totally. So it just made
I
me
was
laugh.
wondering why you're laughing. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
what
I'm
you
like,
got to get an ExxonMobil
so,
issue?
so you know that that person, and she had no kin, or no, not no kin, but no, no husband, no kids, that sort of thing. Anyway, I digress. One of the things, and we touched on this a little bit, right? We did do a few months ago. We did a podcast on day trading versus diversification, and that's where some of this comes in. It's you have to play the game, right? Is taxation important? Is owning the actual stocks important? Is being able to do that little bit of customization, maybe working around Microsoft in your example, or kind of the next piece, which is themes.
Ugh.
Right, this is a way that you can take that next level of customization to work on a theme, and it may not be a theme that you want. It may be a theme that you don't want. You want to touch on that?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, ESG is the dumbest thing out there. But anyway, once
Tell
again,
us how you really feel.
No, I mean, look, we're running a business, and we want to be an all-inclusive platform, and so I guess we have to offer these things. And I don't have to like what we offer. I don't have to agree with or believe what we offer. But listen, some people want to do ESG. Personally, I don't think it's worth a shit. Like, make as much money as you can with the least amount of risk and move on with your life. There's other ways to affect change with your money that you make versus not investing in a certain company. They don't care about you. But anyway, for those who like ESG, this custom SMA is really powerful because you can say exclude tobacco, exclude big oil, exclude firms that don't believe in climate change, whatever it is. I think ESG has a future. I think younger folk more and more want to vote with their feet and vote with their wallets, and so it plays a role, and this allows you to customize indexes, and I think that's powerful for people who want that.
Yeah, well, this is, I mean, the reality is this fits the very mold that we started talking about, which is, is ESG a fad? And that's a whole nother sort of podcast, right? But the concept is all the major players are filling that gap. So, like it or not, you kind of have to take it seriously. I think direct indexing is going down that very same path. Is it a fad or not? Well, guess what? All the big players are putting this in place so that it's a capability. So you might as well know it, understand it, and then, when appropriate, use it, whether or not you happen to like it.
Correct. So before we get into recommendations, let's spend a little bit of time here discussing on our plan. Like, what are our plans? What are we going to do about it? Look, we're a model provider, but we recognize that we have to have these capabilities. So in the near future, we are going to roll out an SMA portal, so to speak, where you're going to have the ability to come in and choose different SMA managers that will apply these customizations to your account. Now, we can sit down with advisors and clients and do some information gathering and try to figure out, fine, what's your tax rate? Are there ESG themes you want to follow? And we build these templates, totally customizable to that client. So that client is in a certain tax rate, doesn't want energy, doesn't want tech, and then we apply that to the account. The cool thing is you can sleeve that within the context of other accounts. So if you have, a huge trust account along with smaller model accounts, we can all house it in the same account. So it's kind of a UMA SMA sleeve capability that we're planning on rolling out here. I'm hoping in June, but that's our plan. Have you talked to advisors besides feedback who are directly looking for this?
Not yet.
Okay.
Now, the one thing, and this is an extra little piece that I want to throw in here because I thought this was an interesting approach. This is something we hadn't talked about yet in regards to this, and it falls a little different down this road, and that's when it comes time to talk about performance, right? This is part of why you and I don't necessarily care for ESG personally all that much, because anytime you start taking out and putting roadblocks in front of your strategist, those are hurdles that they have to now work within. But that's the managers are doing those things. When you talk about direct indexing and saying, okay, I don't want any casinos or gambling or any guns. We'll just pick two really obvious things, and you pull all the companies out that are associated with that. Now the advisor gets to have a conversation. It's a little different because, well, hey, the direct index is going to get basically the return of the index, right? I mean, if you had everything in it and it all matches the same weightings, that's what you get. But now it's the client's responsibility that they wanted to pull out guns, they wanted to pull out gambling. And it may work to their favor or it may not, but that performance, positive or negative, versus the actual index, is no longer on the advisor. And that's part of the reason that I think this will not be a fad. There are going to be some advisors that want to be able to basically offer the customization and put the onus on the client that, hey, Mr. Client, you chose not to have these things. And when you take that out of the mix, this is what you get. Right? The advisor's not making that decision. There's not a manager making that decision. This was the client decision. So that's just different flavor.
It's attribution, right? I mean, you when the S&P is up 10%, you have, it's hard to really pin down where that's coming from just looking at a statement. But if you're going to start pulling things out, right. I mean, it could backfire. You could be a hero, but you could pull out guns and tobacco and your account's down because of it. But that's your decision. That's your prerogative.
But so this is where you get.
We're not here.
Go ahead.
We're not. Listen, it's our podcast, so we can say what we want, but we're not here to push thoughts on people. Like, look, if you want to come and we're going to make it available, knock yourself out. I mean, we currently have SMA capabilities, but we're using outside managers to implement that, and we would like to still use outside managers, but doing within the context of our portal in UMA, and also maybe bring on some folks ourselves to offer that. At least from the tax law side, I don't think we're going to have any ESG Potomac things going on, but
no. I mean, I love using strategists. I think there's a huge value there. But hey, if this is what you want, basically a passive approach to indexing, improve the taxation situation, and customize it a little bit, then hey, that's what this is. That's what direct indexing and custom
I think it's going to be big. I think it's not for everyone. It's for a certain subset. And I did talk trash about it, and do I regret it? No, because at the time, it was presented as a way to replace an ETF or a fund, and I think that's silly.
Yeah.
That's silly. You're going to save 3 basis points and have 500 positions in your account? Come on, get out of here.
Yeah. Sanity for 3 basis points. I can make that decision pretty easy. All right, so on that note, what do you got for recommendations?
Okay, so you're not a coffee drinker. We love coffee in our family, and we've gone through the gamut, right? We had a regular coffee drip maker, a Keurig, and then we went to these espresso machines, and now we are taking it a step further. So now I got an upgraded coffee machine that grinds the beans fresh and makes the espresso, and it's a life changer. And all right, I take that back. I mean, it's coffee. It's not a life changer, but it's made our lives much better in terms of the quality of the coffee. The downside is now, I'm at a Regis building and I canceled my coffee account because I can't drink it anymore because it's so bad. So anyway, we use a Breville, I think is how you pronounce it, espresso maker. We'll put in the show notes. Stop laughing. What do you understand what you're laughing about?
I just
because you don't drink coffee?
You kill me, brother. I mean, all the problems in the world, and it's see, I don't know if you realize this, but when you're on the schoolhouse, the drug dealer says, here, try this, it's free, right? That's basically Folgers. And then you work your way up to get to the top end. I
got the good drugs now.
Exactly. I had a buddy that was all about, I mean, he had his own bean roaster. I mean, he had those freaking kettle things, you sift through, you weigh everything, you roast your own beans, you do all this shit. And I'm like, dude, it's a cup of coffee. Screw that.
No, you're wrong.
Do
it's
me a
not.
favor.
It's
Just
not a
give
cup
me
of coffee.
screwdriver.
Take that back. Take it back. Take it back. It's not a cup of coffee. Regular coffee is disgusting, and this is delicious, and I'm taking this to my grave. So right. Breville espresso maker, it's not cheap, but whatever. That is what they choose your life. So go ahead.
I should just recommend my favorite vodka. But anyway, after that, no, I'm gonna throw a show in there. This is an Amazon Prime original, so you have to have Amazon Prime to see it. It's called The Wilds. It is.
First of all, hold on. Who doesn't have Amazon Prime? I mean, do you know anyone on this planet that doesn't have Amazon Prime?
Well, you're probably right. I mean, at this point, if they don't, they're not listening to our podcast either because they don't know
Well,
what
we
a
should
computer
that's
is.
that's a survey. Yeah, exactly. They say there's I don't know
Oh
anyone who
wait,
doesn't have
I
a Prime
do.
account.
By the way, hi Dad.
Oh yeah, my dad actually doesn't either. I think
There
he
you go.
uses mine, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
So all right.
Sorry.
So on that note, Amazon Prime: The Wilds. All right. It's basically a show, and I think this is really intriguing. They've done a cool job of mixing up things. You've got to pay attention. It's sort of a drama thriller sort of thing. Basically, there's 6 or 7 girls that are stranded on an island after a plane crash. All right. That's the premise. The reality that you, the viewer, get to know is that they think they've been in a plane crash, but they're actually being watched as part of a psychological experiment. And that to me, I mean, I have a psychology degree. I was in it to win it once I saw the trailer and realized what the premise was. And so it's pretty freaking cool. There's only one season, so you can binge it pretty quick. But it definitely has a few aha moments, and like I said, I found my wife and I found we probably talked about this. It sounds funny. Talked about it during the show more than anything we've ever watched. Meaning like, oh, well, what about this? Would you do this? How I would have done this, right? As these different situations.
I would be the first. I would be the first one dead in this experiment because
they don't have a
can't handle
fucking
things
coffee
like this.
maker.
On that note, I'm leaving. Are we done?
All right. Yeah, you probably would be the first one out. On that note, let's all go out. Hey, check us out. Don't forget.
Hell, hold on. I want to say thanks to everyone because our YouTube channel is starting to rock. So
Yes.
keep up the subscriptions, and I know Christopher's pumped about that. Check us out on YouTube, and how else, Jeff?
Well, you pretty much just said what I was going to say. So, congrats. You deserve a coffee.
See ya.
All right, ciao.